Real conversation sees the opportunity space. The opportunity space is that little moment in time between when you speak and I respond. And I have a choice of how I'm going to respond. And I could blow up, because sometimes that's effective, and sometimes that works, and sometimes that's necessary. However, every interaction you have with people, and during the conversation, grabbing the steering wheel means that you are using that opportunity space and you're deciding how you are going to respond. And there is so much power in that, because you can decide, and I always tell people you can decide whether or not you're going to get mad. They're like, no, I can't. I'm either mad or I'm not. Well, I talked to somebody the other day, and she said, it's really frustrating to me. I don't know why she does this and why he does that. And I said, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Okay? She said, well, I go to him and say, I need this product. He says it's not available. She says, okay, well, can you go find me a substitute? And he said, yes. And she said, it makes me so mad. I said, okay, but this happens all the time. So reality is, he doesn't automatically think substitute, but if you ask him, he'll gladly do it. So why don't you just go to him in the first place and say, I need this product, and if you don't have it, give me a substitute. And he'll say, okay. Because that's how he operates, right? But instead, she was letting herself get all frustrated. And I said, the reality is, this is how this man operates. You've worked with him for a long time. Why is this a surprise to you? Why does it make you mad every darn time? You're not protecting yourself, in my opinion, but you have that little moment where you decide how you're going to respond. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have days where things that people do are just going to make us mad, because, I don't know, I have those days too. But in this moment, we want to ask ourselves 3 questions. 3 questions in a second. Can you do that? What do I really want to accomplish in the long term? Where are they coming from, and how am I making them feel? And if you ask those 3 questions, you're going to be able to respond from what I call a humble position of power, because you are going to be there thinking about them, thinking about how you're impacting that person, but because you are, you're going to approach it correctly, and you're going to get more done. But if you don't use that, then you can turn into the tyrant, and for certain people that you work with, your tyrant role might be okay, and your tyrant hat might work. But there's people that it's not going to work for, or there's people it's not going to work for forever, or there's people it's definitely not going to bring out their best. So you're a whole lot more powerful if you stop and you think about them instead. So let's talk about, what do I want to accomplish in the long term? What are your expectations? Are they clear? This is where I say the things in your head might be a whole lot further than what comes out of your mouth. Have you shared these expectations? Have you articulated them well? I say don't should all over people. They should do this, they should do that, they should. Every time you want to say that, say, what have I told them? How have I communicated that they should have known? And I'm not saying that they didn't ignore you or forget or not do it well, but ask yourself at least that question first and say, is there a way they should have known? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? It could be, but obvious to you is the distance from here to here back to their brain. It's not obvious to somebody else. The little boy looks out in the world. Not everybody sees things the same obvious way you do. I have a very good friend who things are obvious. Everything's obvious. How come you didn't see it? It's right there in front of your nose. Well, you can look at the situation a little bit differently. Are the same things important to the other person? If innovation is very important to you and consistency is very important to them, could there be any conflict there in conversation? And is innovation a good goal? Yes. Is consistency a good goal? They're both good, but there certainly can be a conflict, can't they? And in any given conversation, you might be talking innovation, and then tomorrow you might be talking consistency, because we're talking about 2 different topics. So unless you are clear about your expectations and they become part of your conversation, okay, so wait a minute, back up. I don't think we're on the same page. Can we talk about that? Can we talk a little bit more? Is your goal admirable and ambitious? So if your goal is really different from theirs, can you explain it a little bit, get them to talk about it a little bit, and maybe they'll say, you know what, that is cool. I can buy into that. I can go with that. That's exciting. Is it motivational? Is it inspirational? You're like, oh my golly, we're going to do this. It's going to be awesome. I need your help. Can you work with me? Is it exciting? Maybe not. Maybe it's boring. And then but that's okay, then you throw it out there. There's the elephant, right? I know this is deathly boring. I know you really don't want to do it, but I need your help. So can we talk? Can you help me? Back in 1997, my mother sat me down on the couch at her house, and she said, Bridget, I have to have an operation. I got a little lump, got to have it removed. Not a big deal, don't worry about it. It was Wednesday. She said, I'm going to have an operation next Tuesday. Get it all taken care of, no big deal. Okay, well, at the time I was running nursing homes and retirement communities. And I said, well, show me the lab report. I'll look at a lot of this stuff, right? So I looked at it. I said, Mom, this is bad. You got cancer and it's pretty progressed. Well, it's a lump and he's going to take it out and we'll be fine. So we went to meet with the surgeon. And being the analytical person that I am, I brought a list of questions. Every family member had a copy. We had all things we were going to ask the surgeon. You can imagine how much the surgeon liked me. Before he even asked if we had any questions, he was walking out the door. So that's how much I liked him as well. And I said, Mom, I don't feel good about this. He hasn't even talked to an oncologist, and this says you have cancer. We don't even have an oncologist working with us yet. He's just going to go in there and cut it out? So I went back to the nurses I worked with, and I said, all right, guys, what do you think? What should we do? And they said, well, there's this hospital here in Buffalo called Roswell, and they're fabulous for cancer treatment. Fabulous. You've got to get your mom to go there. She says, I know a nurse who works over there. It's really hard to get in on short notice, but I'll call her. We'll get your mom an appointment. At least get her seen by an oncologist before you just roll right ahead and do something different. And I said, all right, great. And she said, okay, I'll take care of that, whatever. So I come home, Mom, this is great. Because they all looked at the lab report and said, whoa, Bridget, this is advanced. This is not just a lump. This is some serious cancer situation. Ended up being stage 3B. I mean, she was well out there. So anyway, I come home and I said, all right, Mom, this is what we're doing. We're doing this, and we're going to Roswell and getting you an appointment. She said, I am not going to Roswell. Under any circumstances, she started crying and she walked out of the room. Okay, what do I want to accomplish? I want my mom to live. I really do, and I really want you to go get the best possible treatment. She would not talk to me about it. Absolutely not. Not having a conversation, not going to Roswell, having the surgery on Tuesday, end of story. Now, I didn't at first use my opportunity space. Mom, what are you thinking? But then after a while, we started to. As a family, we started to use the opportunity space a little bit more. We started to say, okay, Mom, can you talk to us? We sent Dad in to talk to her. We sent her sister to talk to her. Mom, what's going on? Well, what she told us is that when she was 11 years old, her dad died. And her dad died of lung cancer. And when she was 11, Roswell Park Research Institute did a lot of cancer research. And cancer research 50, 60 years ago was pretty ugly. And if you wanted to live, you'd take some of these experimental drugs. But, it might kind of kill you in the process. So she watched, at 11 years old, she watched her dad die a very painful death at Roswell. Do you think my mother's going to Roswell? No. I mean, is that a logical thing? She was 11, right? But the 11-year-old brain says, I will never step foot in that hospital, right? So we had to stop and think, all right, what do we really want to accomplish? We could drag her kicking and screaming, what I mean? We could try to do all those things. We could fight with her. We could start the family feud. And, but what I really want to do is I really do want her to go. It is the best place for her. I'm scared if she doesn't, but I have got to take the time and think about this next question, which is, where is she coming from? So we had to stop and think about that. We couldn't say, come on, Mom, that was like 50-some years ago. What's your problem? Get over it. We couldn't do that. We had to look at where she was coming from. And so we talked to her, and we tried to work through it a little bit, and we asked her if she'd just go and check it out. You know what I mean? All those things that when we're stopping and we're thinking about her and we're paying attention to her in the conversation, that then we approached it a little bit differently. We weren't quite as pushy. So she agreed to go on Monday, right, day before the surgery. And she hadn't been to the doctor in like 30 years. And so they kept her there for 12 hours and they did every test under the sun, and she hated me by the end of the day. But she ended up going there and getting chemo first, and then she lived another 10 years, and the surgeon could just go jump off a bridge because we didn't use him. But we had to walk through that process with her first. And so when you are pushing somebody, when something's obvious to you, when something makes sense to you, be clear, first of all, about what you really do want to accomplish. Okay? And then realize that if they are not coming from the same place you are, You may not get that person to think the way you are if you just push. How many people think you convince someone by talking? The more you talk, the more they'll understand, right? Time? Mm-hmm. Oh, tone? Yes.
Because I'll turn you off.
Sure. So when you stop and say, what do I really want to accomplish? I really want to have a conversation with you, and I'm seeing that wall go up, and I know I'm not getting through. Well, I could just push, or I could stop with the question number 2 is, where are you coming from? Why is that so annoying to you? I don't know. And I'm not saying we have to psychoanalyze people, and I'm not saying we have to go back and find their 11-year-old child and figure out what's going on with that person. But we do have to realize that they may be coming from somewhere very different than what we are. I mean, to me, medicine is information, technical. Granted, haven't ever been diagnosed with cancer, haven't anything serious, but I like information. Anything I ever have to do for me, I want lots of information. Mom didn't want any. So sometimes people are coming from a very different place. What are their expectations? What are their experiences? Sometimes I like to ask myself that question, have I ever been in their situation? Because I think, well, that was rude, that was mean, I'd never act like that. And I'm thinking, have I? What situation have I been in where really I have been the jerk that I think they're being right now? Now, I might look different, we might not do it the exact same way, but have you ever been in their shoes? My dad ran the auto shop at Sears for about 35 years, and he had this gentleman come in the one day, and he said that, he was yelling at everybody from the second he walked in the door. You people are overpriced, and you people take too long, and how long are you going to take to fix my car, and blah, 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 blah. He doesn't even have the quote in his hands yet. He doesn't, and he's yelling at everybody and really, being pretty abusive to the employees. My dad's Mr. Calm, and, so I don't know where I got my personality from, but Dad's Mr. Calm, and he talks to the employees, and he says, listen, guys, let's take care of Mr. Jameson, and, I don't know what's going on for him, but let's just take good care of him and try to make his day a good one, right? So they did, and they took good care of him, and nobody got the chip on the shoulder, nobody got offended and acted in a poor way, and, well, 2 weeks later, Mr. Jameson came back. And he said, I'm coming back to bring you donuts and apologize for the person I was 2 weeks ago. He said, my wife just went in the hospital and I wanted to be with her, and then the car broke down and I had to come here instead, and I was just all frustrated, and, okay, have you been there? Do you have a life outside of work that might make you do things? Do you have stresses at work that might make you act in ways that maybe you're not really so proud of? And maybe it's only with one person and you only jump on them. Or maybe it's only once a year, but different people have different frequencies at which life annoys them. There is always a good and valid reason. I honestly believe that any behavior, anything that anyone ever does, they have a good and valid reason in their head for it. It doesn't mean what they do is acceptable. Okay? It doesn't mean the employee doesn't get fired for it. It doesn't mean that person isn't doing the wrong thing. But people do not do things that they do not believe, for whatever reason, is the right thing to do. Now, maybe they have a less than above board agenda, but people have in their head a good and valid reason. I'm one of those aggressive drivers. I think I'm a good driver, but somebody slow in the left lane drives me crazy. Anybody else? Am I the only one? Okay. So the people in the left lane going slow drive me crazy. It's like, come on. What? I got somewhere to go. Do you have nowhere to go? If you have nowhere to go, go over there. I got somewhere to be. So I'm not real patient with those folks who don't use the blinker and cut you off and don't pay attention, because, I might talk on the phone and do makeup every once in a while, but I'm still going to make sure I use the blinker and look in the blind spot, and I'm going to do everything else at the same time because I'm a big multitasker, okay? So have you ever? Yeah, I've probably been a jerk driver too, but overall I think I'm pretty good. So one night I was coming home from the hospital. I'd gone to see my grandmother. She had a stroke. I had played pinochle with my grandmother forever, since I was 2, since I didn't even know how to play, right? And she would just teach me and kind of let me win a little bit and help me a little bit. And we'd been playing for years. So Grandma had a stroke. I went to see her at the hospital. I said, oh, she's bored stiff. I'll bring the cards. We'll play pinochle. She'll be happy. Pinochle was her life. She played all the time. So I go in there and we start playing cards, and I throw a spade, and Grandma just kind of looks at it. I said, Grandma, throw a spade. And she throws a heart. I thought, oh my golly, I know she's 97, but she's gone. I mean, she's gone, And so I'm all upset. So I'm driving home, right? On the road. Not that many people out there. It's like 11 o'clock at night. and I just changed lanes. Almost ran somebody off the road, right? I'm like, oh my golly, what am I doing? I didn't even use my blinker. I didn't even look. I just changed lanes because there's my exit. Oh my golly, I'm crazy. So did I have a good and valid reason? Yeah. If I ran them off the road and we both end up in the ditch, would the insurance company think it was a good and valid reason? No. Probably not. Yeah. I can explain that in the report. You know, it's all about the pinochle, really. So we do things for whatever reason, right? We have a good and valid reason in our head. So when we're trying to understand somebody else, part of the conversation is, tell me where you're coming from. Help me understand how you're approaching that. Help me understand. I mean, there's some of those phrases that sometimes people are like, yeah, whatever. You know, but if you can get somebody to have that conversation, you can really understand where they're coming from. Sometimes you can get through some of those difficult conversations a whole lot easier. And this happened up in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York has the friendliest people in the world. They get voted friendliest by USAA every year. Do you know what the guy did? The guy I almost ran off the road. He pulls up next to me, and I'm like, oh my God, don't look. I want to look at him. He looks at me, and he smiles, and he looks at me like, are you okay? And he waves. I'm like, oh my golly, thank you for using your opportunity space, because I don't know if I would have done that. Well, that's not Memphis, is that what you said, Cheryl? But the thing is, he gave me the benefit of the doubt. And I could assume that I was never in that position, that it was always somebody else who was being the crazy driver. You know, but at least now I might say, well, maybe where are they coming from? Now, my dad always tells the story of going, 90 miles an hour down Harlem Road, getting mom to the hospital so she didn't have the baby in the car. You know, I don't think that's everybody's excuse, but you just don't know where that person's coming from. Are you curious? If you really want to know where somebody's coming from, you have to ask yourself, am I really curious? Or do I really not care? And I just want them to do it. Well, and that's why we're talking about difficult conversations to accelerate your success. Because if someone is not important to your success, great. Don't use your time and energy. This takes a lot of time and energy. But if the person is important to your success, then darn it, you better use your time and energy. And if you're not naturally curious, you better figure out how to be. You better genuinely become interested in where they are coming from, because you're hitting a brick wall with this person. Unless you can just use somebody else, interact with somebody else, or fire them. You know, if they're important and you have to figure them out, then be curious. Well, I wonder why they do that. I wonder why they approach it that way. Why? But now that word you can't necessarily say to them, why do you do it like that, right? The why word's very strong, but ask yourself that, then ask them a question. Tell me where you're coming from. Give me more information. Help me understand. Do you listen to learn and understand, or do you listen to figure out what to say next? Listening is very difficult. You can listen at about 600 words a minute, and I can only speak like 200. Even the Yankee in me can only go up to about 200, even if I really get going. So you have a lot of excess brain capacity. So as I stand up here right now, you have 75% of your brain that you can be doing something else with. So, I mean, are you paying attention? So when you're trying to listen to someone, it is physically difficult because you have so much excess capacity up there. So you really do have to focus and pay attention to that person and what they're saying. Pinball. Everybody ever played pinball? Okay, that's how your brain works. So I say grandma and pinochle. Oh my golly, that's right. My grandma used to play pinochle and boing, 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 boing. You know, your brain goes all over the place. That's what we naturally do. So if you are going to listen well to someone, it takes some work, it takes some energy, it takes some focus. Third piece, how am I making them feel? However they feel is okay. Ever tell somebody don't feel that way? People can't physically do that. If they're upset, if they're angry, if they're worried, they are going to be that way. Just take it as a fact. That's how it is. And then what are you going to do? I mean, how they act, certainly, as I said before, even though they have a good and valid reason, how they're acting might not be okay, but you've got to take responsibility for your impact on how they feel. Doesn't mean you're responsible for how they feel, but if you're impacting it, and you can impact it different by stopping and pausing in just a second and approaching it a little bit different, it can be very powerful. Picking up pieces and rebuilding relationships takes an awful long time. A lot longer than it does to do it right the first time. And there may be certain people who you've kind of put in the category that you don't need to be conscious about them because they appear to be much more tough, or they don't appear to care how you feel. But all of that sometimes can just be that smokescreen. And the more you pay attention to that, the better chance you have of being successful with that person.